to Growing Up in Easton. I'm Priscilla, Almquist-Olsen, your host, and today is November 21st, 2024. My goodness.
I know.
Oh, and I have the most wonderful surprise for all of you. I have the Freitas triplets.
I feel young again.
The Freitas triplets. Immediately to my left is Rosemary Freitas Williams. Then comes her brother Richard Freitas. We all know him from real estate in town. And Gail Freitas Devins. We know her from Historic Easton, or what's that name of that show you have?
Discover Easton.
Discover Easton, right, here on Easton Community Access Television. And we're going to talk about your later life, but today it's about growing up in Easton. And you all probably had some very memorable days here in Easton. And what's the pecking order? I think I know, but aren't you? Is Richard the oldest?
Yes.
I'm the oldest.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
I just
he
turned
is the
68.
oldest, so
Yeah.
he's number one.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you have to be in charge all the time?
Thank God, no.
Did you defer that to Rosemary?
Always.
No. There were 3 equal strong personalities.
You all have strong
I'd say
personalities.
so.
Yes, I think.
Well, I think it's when one considers your parents, Gloria and Louis, they both had strong personalities, and they had a wonderful zest for life, and you all have it too. You got that gene.
Absolutely.
I'd say so.
Yes.
I'd say so.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start. Who wants to start? Richard, you're the oldest. You want to
Richard
start?
would love to start.
Yes, he would.
Okay.
Wouldn't you, Richard?
Yes. Okay.
What is your earliest memories?
Earliest memories.
And you
growing
can
up.
talk about your interaction with your siblings, but you can also talk about your interaction with your friends too.
See, my earliest memories, other than coming here today. Let's see. Goodness, goes way back. I remember growing up, the 3 of us, our family, and 2 other families, shared a lodge in Bartlett, New Hampshire, where we skied and hiked much of the year. And it was a big lodge. And there were hiking trails around us. There were mountains around us to ski at. Perhaps a lot of the same resorts you see today. One was a Black Mountain, where we had season passes and spent most of our time skiing. Wildcat at Attach Mountain Village. And we also hiked during the summer months, and in the fall we'd go up for apple picking and so forth. So those are some of the memories that stick out in my
Okay,
childhood
well,
life.
that skiing and that hiking and that apple picking,
Yeah.
it sounds like your mother.
Yes.
Oh, much so. Much so.
She was a wonderful skier,
Sure.
and I'm sure she picked apples, but I know she did a lot of hiking. Right.
She sure did.
She was
Very active.
She was an explorer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. And what about Richard, what about some of the interactions you had? What's one of the earliest ones you had with Rosemary and Gail? Can you remember? Fighting over something? Was it a pillow fight?
Well, no, I left the fighting up to Rosemary and Gail. I just kind of
It's
stayed
true.
out of the middle.
It's
and,
true. It's true.
had my own bedroom, so I just.
Yeah. I don't remember ever fighting with Richard, honestly. I don't think we ever fought.
No, I tried. I tried to get along with each of them, and so I was kind of the quietest of the bunch, maybe.
So, Rosemary, what about you? What are some of your earliest memories?
I would say my earliest memories of Easton would begin at Willow Road, where we had a little, was it a rancher or a
It
little
was
cottage?
ranch. Today it's a colonial.
A little rancher, and then we moved to Eisenhower Drive. Mom and Dad found a beautiful lot at the end of Eisenhower Drive, and it backed up into how many acres?
Well, 14.
14 acres, and there was a tree growing out of it, and they hired this remarkable architect named Paul Ducharme, and he came in and designed something absolutely dazzling with ginormous railroad ties crisscrossing the ceiling, cathedral lights hanging, a whole wall of a fireplace, unfinished brick wall, no upper cabinets in the kitchen. It was dazzling. And the Brockton Enterprise did a whole spread on it. And you should have seen Mom. She was standing in the doorway in the title photo with a pencil skirt and, you know, that bra that was so popular in 1965. And she looked like a movie star. And it had these parties where we had to go to Aunt Mary Nolan on Center Street, and spend the night so they could have these swanky parties until we got older, and then we could be waitress and waiter, which we thought was kind of fun. Anyways, those are some of the earliest memories, and relevant to almost nothing. The house at Willow, when we left it, I left a Donald Duck inflatable. It was a big inflatable donut, and Donald Duck's head was sticking out of it, and I still miss it today. And I guess those are the earliest ones.
And how about you, Gail?
Wow, that's amazing that you remember Willow Road. I don't remember Willow Road. I remember being at Eisenhower Drive, and we would, as Rosemary mentioned, my mother and father did quite a bit of entertaining. And I remember there was a point in time during the entertaining that they would say, "Okay, children, come downstairs." And of course, it's just 2 steps. We'd come downstairs and we'd have to say hello to all the guests in our pajamas. And that, do you remember that? Coming down those steps and greeting everyone?
It was like a kind of a strange version of Sound of Music.
Yeah.
Avita saying goodbye, adieu, adieu to you.
So we would
and
do
you
that.
and
And but the feeling that I had was amazing. It was just, you used the word exquisite, and I just felt like everything was so wonderful that our home became this beautiful place where people gathered and had such a great time, and we were part of it. It felt very special. So.
And so you have probably maintained some of the relationships with those people and their children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what influence did your parents have on you and their friends? Who wants to answer that?
Well, they were known for their dancing. There was not a dance available out there that they didn't know. In fact, when I was in college, they went to a fundraiser at the Copley Plaza Hotel, and I said I would stop by. I was living in Boston. And I stopped by a little bit on the late side, and the place was about empty, and they were playing La Bamba. And Mom and Dad were out there alone on the dance floor doing the merengue, which is a very complicated dance invented for a king who had one leg shorter than the other. And it was invented to disguise his limp. And they were just having a ball.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So definitely people knew them for dancing, always having a good time, great entertainers. And both of them interesting separately and together, and interested separately or together. They're always great company, and it was required of us too to be good company too, I think.
Absolutely.
And I imagine growing up, Gail, that you were taught to have very good manners, and not just with grown-ups, but with your peers.
Yes, so we were taught that, and especially because we all had the privilege of working at my father's Freitas Associates growing up. And so if we were to answer the phone at a very young age, or addressed a client that came in, we had to be very careful how we spoke. He didn't like us using the word okay. He wanted to make sure that we were, but it helped as I got older and got into the business world, just knew how to properly do a handshake, and it was very good. And out in public, we were to have a good time, but we also knew enough to just be respectful of people and not go too crazy, and just to it was very good. Very good examples of my mother and father had very good examples. I was always very proud to watch my mother and my father interact with people, and I have to say, Rosemary and Richard, when I watch them interact with people, my favorite thing to do is to watch the people with whom they're interacting and watch their response, because they're always so happy to be in their presence. Whether it's some humor or some interesting conversation you have, you both do amazing. So I just
Right back at you.
Oh, thank you.
But that's something that you was instilled in you growing up.
Yes.
And yeah.
What about you?
Well, growing up in the family real estate business, especially as young children, it's interesting because you kind of grew up and it came to you by osmosis, and it was the school of hard knocks. It was you're an associate during the day, but when you come home, especially the same household, now you're a family member. Now you're a son or daughter. It's an interesting dynamic. It's a turn off, turn on, especially when you had the old code ringing. There was one thing when you had the circle, the dialing,
The phone,
that circle, the old phones, but not only that, but also the code ringing. You do a 497, you hang it up, and then it rings to the office, it rings home.
So we would, just to elaborate a little bit, we would be at the dinner table, and the dinner table was, because it was a modern house of the day, we sat at a counter, shoulder to shoulder, and which made for an uncomfortable sibling experience.
Yeah, just a little.
And then when the phone would ring, as Richard describes, it would be code ringing. So if it rang a certain way, it meant it was for the office. And in real estate business, the phone will ring more off hours than during business hours. And so as soon as on that first ring, utensils down. And you had to wait for that call to end. Although Daddy would eventually take it into another room.
Right,
but
if he had to. Yeah.
you would just look at your food and wait for him to get off the phone.
Well, you had to be quiet because the person calling thinks
You're
they're
in the
reaching
office.
Right.
So it must sound like an office, not like you're cutting or you're dropping utensils on the
That's right.
plate or cutting some food.
putting carrots on your fork.
Right.
Yep.
So it was the real estate business was, and back then the insurance business together was nonstop. It was the phone, as Rosemary said, the phone could ring at any time. So you had to be in. If you knew it was a business call based on the code of that ringing, it was a 1 ring or 2 ring. You knew you had to say, okay, this is a business call. Quiet. My father would take the call, and the phone would be right there next to his plate. But yeah, it was.
But he ran a very successful business.
He did.
And I think that's due to the fact that he was so he was very social and cordial, and that just spoke to the respect he had for people, and they responded in kind.
It's extraordinary when you think about, he graduated high school, he got a $10 scholarship to go to Boston Business.
Boston Institute School of Real Estate Practice. Yeah.
And he got out of there and hung a shingle on Main Street, the 7th of 8 children of illiterate immigrants, and very quickly gained, at the peak, 80% of the market.
That's right.
Wow.
80% of the real estate market, and then became the Chamber of Commerce, and was highlighted in a Smithsonian Magazine article about small towns. And we talked about Easton, and held in high regard by the Ames
Sure.
and still in an era where there were definite
Class differences.
differences in town. Less so now, of course, but yeah, he did fairly well, very well.
And so, did you have pajama parties ever at home?
Oh,
Were you allowed?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so our mother and father were very, they knew how to act in public, and they were very good, and but they also knew how to have fun. They had fun, and they had fun. Our family, I always felt very special in our family because we had a lot of fun. So for instance, when we were going to church every Sunday, my father would start the car up, and my mother was just a tad late, running a little late. So she would run out to the car in her high heels, run out to the car, and just when her hand got on the door and opened it, he'd advance the car. So she would have to run alongside the car and jump in.
Hop on one leg.
Every single day. So I thought this was something that happened with every marriage.
And we would be cheering from the back seat.
Like, come
on, get in!
Get in!
Just
Yeah,
hilarious.
So things like that, they know how to have fun. And just every day was an adventure. I do remember talking about going way back. I do recall when, first of all, we never had dinner without my father at the table. So he would come home pretty promptly at 6 p.m. and we would eat all together as a family. We rarely ate unless we were all together as a family. And I feel like that really brought us together, and we talked about what was going on during the day. Backing up, I do remember when my father would come home, we would race Rosemary, and I think Richard was there too, but we would race over to my father. And he had those nice shoes, you know, with the Bostonians, with the little ties.
Kind of like what Richard has on.
Yeah, like with Richard. Richard has the shoes right now, there you go. But, so my father would be on a business call, and we would jump on his foot. And while he's on a business call, he'd give us horsey rides on the foot. Remember that, Rose?
Yeah, I do.
Up and down. And then we'd argue who would be able to undo his shoes first, remember?
Right. Yeah.
So that he would take off his business shoes and relax. So it was a very nice family time. And I felt very secure. There was not one moment that I ever felt insecure as a child growing up. I felt like the world
Very safe.
was
Yep.
very safe. I felt like the world was a very safe place and no harm would ever come to us. I think that they did a very good job doing that. And not protecting us so much to the point where we weren't aware of what was going on in the world, but we felt like everything was okay. Everything's going to be okay. So.
In the town, the environment fostered that.
Yeah.
So the fun part of growing up in Easton is when you're the daughter or son of someone who was born in Easton, is that people stuck around.
Yeah.
And so our science teacher, our history teacher went to high school with Daddy. And what did Mr. Webster teach?
Buddy Webster.
Buddy Webster went to high school.
Worcester.
Oh,
Worcester.
not Webster, Worcester, forgive me.
Worcester, yeah.
He taught English, he went to high school with Daddy. So it was really fun. And then on top of that, walking down the street or going to a high school event or anything that required a police presence, 2 or 3 of the officers went to school with Dad. So you couldn't get away with anything either.
Yeah. Can I piggyback on that?
Absolutely.
So one day, I was in home ec class, and I was sitting there and talking away, and the teacher, Miss Harvey, said, "Gail, come to the front of the room." So I came to the front of the room. She says, "Gail, I have 2 things to say to you." I said, "What's that?" She says, "Number 1, you're talking way too much. Number 2, you're just like your father." I said, "How do you know how my father was?" My father had her for homeroom class. So here I am having a teacher that he had. So it's just,
Wow.
it's just amazing. And so that feel of Easton being as small as it was, there was a definite community.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, there was an atmosphere of community, and it was.
When I was growing up in the 50s, there were 6,000 people. When my mother was growing up in the 20s, there were 5,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, and in 1960, the population jumped to a little over 9,000. And that was the year I graduated Albrains.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it has steadily grown and grown. And I think the atmosphere that you describe is probably one of the key components that attracted people.
Yes.
Yes.
I bet that's true.
I agree.
I bet that's true. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also had, that recent expression about it takes a village. Well, we all knew that, and we all practiced that, didn't
Yes.
we?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd
absolutely.
say that's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I can remember walking down Main Street past O'Connor's news store, and my mother greeted another mother, and with her she had a child who was intellectually challenged, and that child was treated exactly the same way as I was treated.
Yeah.
And so we didn't make distinctions, and people took care of their own, and everyone felt a parental presence with other children.
Yes.
So it was very common for somebody else's parent to scold me.
Right.
Of course, I never got scolded very much.
Oh, no.
Of course not.
Of course not, Priscilla.
But what I'm saying is, everybody took a responsibility, and I can remember my mother scolding somebody, you know, because some boy was pulling some girl's braids or something, you know. We all took a part in guiding the younger generation. I think the older generation, your parents as well as my parents.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely, yeah. Yeah, and part of the community as well, the Easton Garden Club. Rosemary and I were part of the Junior Garden Club, and they had the house tours back then as well. And I remember going in there and just sitting there and with Rosemary, and it was supposed to be very proper as the people came in, but that was fun. But it's interesting because I felt like everybody experienced that everybody went through that. So it's just, I think we were very blessed. We were very blessed, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your friends in high school, and any particular moments that stand out, Richard?
Friends in high school. Well,
Don't worry, we can censor anything.
right.
No names.
Yeah, right.
We can edit. We
Talk
can edit
about your
things.
band.
Well,
The jazz band.
Sure. I graduated in 1975, and it was that year that we had an undefeated regular season basketball team and hockey team at Oliver Ames. And during the basketball games, myself and my cousin Mark Freitas and John Vos, we have a little pep band called Zhivago. So I'd play saxophone, Mark would be on trombone, John would be on trumpet. We'd play during the timeouts in the basketball game.
So what did you play?
Saxophone.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was so
And-
proud of him.
So it was fun, you know, and
They were really
so it was a
good.
lot of
They were
fun.
really good. They wore
Yeah.
cowboy hats.
That I don't remember.
Yeah, well, that I remember, I want to forget. No, I'm just kidding. But no, we had a lot of fun. Aside from being in the band, the tennis team played baseball, and so certainly. And we started at Oliver Ames High School in the 9th grade when the school, the current high school, was just finishing up in its construction in 1971. And you know, it's just amazing how time flies, and that was on split sessions, if you remember the split sessions, and then how time flies because our daughter Bonnie graduated in 2008 when the addition, I believe, was being completed. So when I started high school, it was just the original part of the school had just been completed, and when my daughter finished, the addition had just been completed.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing how the town has grown.
Yes.
Back then it was about 10,000 people when we graduated in 75. I think, it's about 25,000 today.
yes, we're 26,
Yeah,
27,000.
yeah. So it's even
Wow.
more. Sure.
Wow.
But one of the wonderful things about Easton is that 38% of Easton's geography is in conservation. And so there aren't a lot of buildable lots around.
No, they're not.
And so we've put the brakes on the population to make it much more people-friendly,
Sure.
rural,
Yes,
neighborly.
indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, did you ever go on a lot of hikes with your parents? And if so, where'd you go, Rosemary?
Well, we went to New Hampshire as Richard described, but every Sunday we would hike. We would go to church, have a reasonably big dinner. They'd invite the bachelor Paul Duchamp, who would show up in a black turtleneck and greaseback hair, and he was all very mysterious and elegant. Or Grandma Freitas. Dad would go get his mom from assisted care down on Baldwin Street and come in. And Grandma, whether she could or not, did not speak any English. So that was always a challenging conversation. But after dinner, we would clean up, and then we'd all get on our grubby clothes, as it was called, and we'd walk in file down through the woods to a canoe that Dad had tied up, and we would all get in the canoe, all 5 of us, and it was Mom in the bow and Daddy in the stern, and then the 3 ducklings, Gail, me, and then Richard, and we'd go out on Morse's Pond, right? And just paddle around, and it was absolutely gorgeous and fabulous and fun. And then, of course, you get bored and you'd rock the boat, which made Gail upset. But just kids being kids. And that preservation that you talk about, while it wasn't maybe codified back then, the intent was always there. People loved the land around Easton. They loved Borderland. They loved Morse's Pond, and it felt very isolated out there with the lily pads and the turtles, and it was just a blast. It was really, really lovely.
And also out in the woods, in the land that we had, the cranberry bogs. And
one of the few quaking cranberry bogs in the area.
Yeah. And we enjoyed it because we could skate on the cranberry bog and skate under the the branches because we were very small, and that was a lot of fun. And the neighbors, we had a trampoline in our yard, and we would have the neighborhood children would want to use our trampoline, but we would charge them. And how we charged them was they had to go up to Abbott's Pharmacy.
I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, maybe it was my friend Kathy and I, Kathy Cottarella. So they'd go up to Abbott's Pharmacy and have to buy us candy. So they'd buy us candy, come back down Eisenhower Drive, and we would let them go for about a half hour.
It sure seems like Richard and I should have had a cut of that.
Yeah, right.
And this was a trampoline without the netting that is so ubiquitous now. It was
very
and we'd go
safe.
out in the dark and jump up and then not 9 times out of 10 land properly, but that 10th time land hard on the ground and be kind of surprised by it.
This is before the time the insurance company would surcharge
That's
you for
right.
a trampoline. So
Oh my gosh, do they now really?
some will even cancel.
Oh yeah.
Oh my
Oh yeah, and the insurance costs more than the trampoline. But
Wow.
now you talked about friends, and so having friends in Easton, generally because back in the day, you would have a friend in kindergarten, but have that friend all the way through graduating high school. So when we graduated high school, it was so amazing because, and it had a lot of emotion, because you were with these people since kindergarten. Like John Bellino, was a neighbor of ours, and we grew up since kindergarten. We had Hong Kong flu at the same time, the whole thing, and to graduate with him was just amazing. It was just kind of sad, but good in a way. So.
And fast forward a little bit, whenever someone in the neighborhood of Eisenhower Drive died, a parent or whomever, usually you'd find a lot of the neighborhood rally around either at the wake, funeral, or memorial service. It was really a closely knit community.
Yeah. People
neighborhood.
cared.
Sure.
Now, getting
absolutely.
back to the dangers of trampolines,
What
about-
intrigued you?
what about the Frothingham Memorial Park?
Oh, I was just talking to
The
my
Rock.
husband Rick about
Rock.
that. Oh man, do you remember that metal pole and what came off the pole with those chains? And at the end of the chain was the handle, right? And you'd all take your chain and you'd run around the circle until you're airborne. How safe is that? Bodies.
It was a human maypole.
With chains.
But you know what I respect is that the Rock, which is still
Rock.
who just passed away recently. Mr. Worcester, Buddy Worcester passed away, and he was he was a supervisor,
Manager,
thank you, of Frothingham for so long. And he said it's still the number one plaything in the entire park.
Is the rock.
Not the courts, not the ball fields, it's the rock. And I remember, and I know everybody's had this experience, you're at the base of the rock and it is, you know, it's Gibraltar. It's just huge. And then you come back decades later and
Not so big.
I wonder what they did with the big rock. No, that's it.
Oh, it's still pretty big.
It's still, yes, it's still very big. So
Yeah.
when Mom and Dad wanted to go skiing without us, which was a lot, they would dump us off at our Aunt Mary Nolan, who lived on Center Street. Because why not? How much harder is it to take care of 3 more when you have 8? And I'm not sure about the math, but they had her property backed up into Frothingham, and our cousins had cleverly pulled the fence up so that and then dug a hole. So if you went on your belly through the dirt, you'd pop up in the park, and you didn't have to walk all the way around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
very
that's
nice.
right.
I was just talking about that the other day, and the other funny one is the disc. It's a big round disc, and it has these bars that come across.
Yes.
And you hang on to the bar,
Yeah.
and you all stand on the disc, and you just go whipping around, right? And bodies are just flying off the disc.
And what about the monkey climb or monkey?
Oh.
What
Oh, the
was
monkey
that?
bars.
Monkey
Monkey bars.
What's that
Yes.
about? Yeah.
And then the thing that you would swing across.
And I mean,
with
the distance was substantial.
really high up.
And they were very high up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you were short, like the
Us,
two of
all
you,
us.
I mean, that was a real challenge.
That's right.
Yeah, and,
That's
and
right.
more people got hurt. But,
Right.
but there were
Back
no,
then, back then you got hurt, it was at your own risk. Oh, you got hurt,
Exactly.
come on home, we'll put a Band-Aid on it.
Right.
You're right, Band-Aid on
You
the
got
broken
hurt.
arm.
You didn't try hard enough.
Yeah, right.
Or that means you're trying. That's what it was.
You were trying.
If you fall, that's what Daddy's big thing about skiing. If you fall, that means you're trying.
Yep.
Okay.
yeah, well, you know, times have really changed. So we have helicopter parents now.
Yes.
And then we have all kinds of restrictions on play equipment, right?
Oh, yeah.
And because none of the thrill of those wonderful
And the rubber floors, which I appreciate actually.
Yeah, the thrill
Yeah,
is
yes,
gone. I mean,
yeah.
they'll
Well,
never
the
know.
lead is gone too now. I mean, what's a playground without lead? I mean,
Yeah.
bring the lead
No.
back.
I know,
You know,
No lead, no asbestos.
right?
Oh my God, how's
I
a
don't know
person
what
have
they're
any
missing.
fun now?
They have no idea what they're missing.
Oh, the good old days.
So they turn out like us. Oh
Right.
well.
And then there was a seatbelt thing, and the no
I
smoking
know. Wear the
thing. and-
seatbelt. Oh.
Please.
I can remember. I think it was a 1950 Chevrolet and sedan, and it had to be earlier than that because my brother was born in '49. All right, so it was sometime in the '40s, and it was a brown. I remember a dark brown Chevrolet, and they put a mattress in the back seat for my sister Karen and me, and that's where we slept in a blanket because the trip to New Jersey probably took 10 hours back then. You know, there were no super highways or
Right.
We did the same thing going to New
The same
Hampshire,
thing,
where
yeah.
big station wagon. We brought the dog because that made sense, and I was in the passenger seat because I was in charge of keeping my father awake. If it was night, and so he had an urn of coffee, and then we would listen to the Bruins. And to this day, I hear the Bruins on the radio, and it brings me right back there. And then you guys were in the middle, and then our mother with the dog was all the way back, snoozing away.
Well, she had a flashlight in the book.
and there
Yeah.
were no seatbelts.
Yeah.
Oh no! No.
Another time.
Or sleep on the floor of the
Yeah,
second
And-
seat.
And people
Yeah.
didn't drive that fast then either.
Right. I'd say that's right. I'd say
Yeah,
that's right.
real-wheel drive. in
I
the
mean, who
snow.
drove 80 miles an hour?
And no one was distracted.
Oh, the cars, I probably couldn't handle it anyway.
Right. And Rosemary mentioned in the back of the car, not
Yeah.
to go into great details, but it's part of our life story, so here you go. In the back of the station wagon, in the second seat, there was a hump there, probably for the pipe or whatever. And Rosemary would curl up on one side of the floor, and I'd curl up on the other, and that pipe was our pillow going up to New Hampshire, too. We'd do that. So, it was fun. But getting back to Easton, really just the various places that we go to. Remember, was it MCO 2 on Center Street? There was that, and then there was a sub place, so we would have drill team practice from high school, and we'd take the family car after practice and go get a sub with our friends. I don't know how many people we packed in that car. It was a lot.
So tell me, were there things you remember that you sort of got away with that you knew your parents wouldn't be 100% give their 100% approval? Are there moments like that? See, my brother was on this show and with Sean Fitzgerald. We did it by Zoom because of COVID. And my mother.
Did he surprise you with something?
Oh my goodness! If he told stories I never even knew happened, and my mother would have been absolutely mortified. And
Oh, that's hilarious.
yeah, and but I mean, they were good things. I mean, it didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
You know, could have hurt themselves,
Right.
but not anybody else.
We were not what you call a troublemaking family.
No.
That one, because when you grow up in Easton, there's just too many eyes on you.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I mean, you can't walk
Right.
from Dad's office to high school, and if I do it just by memory, correct me where I go wrong. You walk out of Daddy's office, you walk by Howard Insurance, who knows Dad,
Right.
and then you go by Cousin Janie's art studio,
Who knows, Dad?
and then you turn the corner onto Center Street, and you're going to pass Uncle Manny's clothing store,
Yeah.
where the only place you could buy gym uniforms for years.
Betty Jean Shop.
Betty
We all
Jean
bought
Shop,
them
thank
there.
you.
We all bought them.
And then you'd walk a little bit farther, and you'd go by Aunt Mary's house, and all manner of eyes are on you at that point. And then I mean,
Lothrop
it
Street.
just went on and on. So no matter, you really couldn't do much. So that really kept the behavior kind of in check a little bit. We used to, like everybody else, we used to go to Mountain Road and, you know, and hang out and cause trouble. And when the police showed up, it was Officer Healy, Officer Hurley,
This is when the Swedish officers let
Yes.
the Irish in.
That's right. That's right. That's
well,
right.
barely. You had Jenny Lynn Street, and sort of, you know, there was always a little bit of friction point there, but and then Officer Blood, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, and they have their flashlight in your eyes, and then the next morning you have to work for Daddy in the office, and who comes into O'Connor's? No, what was the restaurant? Was it O'Connor's?
O'Connor's New Store. Yeah.
Who would come in all suited up, but the officers who had their flashlight in your face the night before, and you couldn't eat. You were just so nervous, and they had big smiles on their faces and stop and talk to Daddy, and you're like, any moment now, they're going to say, oh, Rosemary, you were up on Mountain Road with everybody last night. But they, to their credit, and at the end of Mountain Road was so muddy, at the end of the night, I would go through an all-night car wash. And Daddy used to say in the morning, God bless him, I feel so bad. He'd say to my mother, isn't it great that Rosemary had the car washed after she used it last night? I was like, oh, I felt so guilty. But it was clean.
Yeah. Well, you know, back in the day, there was the original. Most of the first police officers. When my mother was growing up, there were two, and one was I forget what his name was, and he was always stationed in front of O'Connor's news store, and he didn't have a car, he didn't have a bicycle, and he was rather morbidly obese.
Oh, dear.
According to my mother. And so to see him run after teenagers
Oh, my.
was quite a sight. But they were very conscious that he didn't want to have him have a heart attack or something. But after that, when I was growing up, the police officers, if somebody had been in the woods with a can of beer and gotten caught, right, and they were underage, the police officer would put him in the back seat, take him home to the parents, and you know.
Oh, my.
And then they would get twice the you know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they cared so much. You know, they realized this was part of just growing up, being a teenager or whatever. Of course, if it was something terrible, naturally they would arrest them or so. But most of the time, they were the parents. The police officers were parents. And they brought them home for the parents to be able to exercise their authority with that child. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
when I think about Easton way back when as well, and you mentioned conservation land, and it wasn't unusual for my mother and father to bring us to various parts of the town, and we would walk through the land and just discover and understand. Flyaway Pond now is a big development on Lincoln Street. We used to go there, and it was just very nice to be part of. Easton just has a place in our heart. Like Rosemary said, when someone asks her where she's from, even though she now lives, I'll speak for her, because she, sorry.
Because she can.
Anyway, she lives in Annapolis, and if someone asks her where she's from, she'll say Easton.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's there, right?
The downside to knowing so much about Easton, so Daddy having so much of the real estate market, knowing it so well, he would sometimes speak without thinking, which was part of his charm, and I do mean that with all my heart. And there's a very well-to-do development in Easton, and we're not going to say where it is. And it used to have a pig farm. So, and people would say, oh, I'm developing a house on such and such. He'd say, oh, so-and-so's pig farm. And they would just be aghast. Flash forward, last year I went to, what's the restaurant, God bless, that just closed down? The Italian restaurant.
La Cucina.
La
Cucina.
La Cucina. I was in La Cucina. I was at the bar. I was having a yummy meal and a glass of wine. I was sitting next to a young fella, and he was talking about how he lived in Easton. How long have you been here? He said, oh, I've been about 15 years. I said, fantastic. He said, how about you? I said, well, I'm from here, but I don't live here anymore. But my family's been here over 100 years. And I said, and tell me, where do you live? And he told me, and I said, oh, the old pig farm. And he's like, and he was not amused. He said, what? I said, I am so sorry.
Whoops.
A million years ago, it was a pig farm, and I changed the subject, but that's the downside to it. And then, there would be a bias, right? If you were from Eastondale,
Oh, yeah.
right? If you were from Easton Furnace,
Yes.
if you were from Southeastern versus Northeastern. To me, that was kind of interesting. The different,
Oh, yeah.
different sort of vibes that came from these little Easton villages.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you step on the reasons, or innocently insult the reasons why people move to the town. They move to a very fancy housing development. Well, yeah, it used to be a pig farm.
We leave that off the brochures.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of you have led interesting lives, and tell us a little bit about your adult life and how your childhood influenced the path you took and where you are now.
Yeah. Well, what immediately comes to mind is I attained the rank of Eagle Scout in 1973. It was a while ago. But using the points of the Scout Law and the oath kind of sets the framework for your life. And I think that had perhaps a big influence in my career, my personal life and career going forward. But it's interesting because today, having lived in the town for my entire life for 68 years, I get very nostalgic about when I drive by certain things, what it used to look like and used to be when I was growing up. Willow Road, I moved out of there when I was 6 years old. I remember my mother crying when Kennedy got shot, and I'm trying to ask her why are you crying? And I was very young. And then, so I'll ride by that house today, and I'll not imagine it now with the second level, but when it was a ranch style house when we first owned it, remember the big snowbanks of going down tobogganing when I was a young kid. Our first dog, Ginger. Donna across the street who used to babysit us, Wow. And then when we moved to Eisenhower Drive, how as Rosemary said, it was a foundation. It got developed into a house, and then we added a tennis court and the acreage there, and just all the relationships we developed with the neighborhood, and how the neighborhood's kind of changed over the years.
And how you followed in your dad's footsteps.
I
took
did.
over the business.
Yes. He started the business in 1949. He died in 2000. God rest him. And when I came out of University of New Hampshire in '79, I got into the business full time. So I'm 46 years in. And nearing retirement. So it was.
So you inherited that from your dad. I mean,
Yeah.
he paved the way. He gave you a livelihood, something that you love
Sure,
and you
yes.
enjoy, and that you're
Yes.
contributing to your community.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and how about you, Rosemary?
Well,
you have a
I-
different story because you.
I do have a different story, but I don't want to gloss over this. I mean, Lions, you followed Daddy
yes.
into
Yeah,
Lions Club,
Lions Club,
and you
yes,
ran that
indeed.
for a while.
Absolutely.
President.
I'm 35 years in right now.
Yeah.
And when he
Easton
was
Lions Club.
president, it became, what was the designation it got? You
Oh,
were
okay.
president?
Well, we were the first.
You were number
Club.
one in the world.
We're the first.
Yeah.
Almost. When I was 98, 99, when I was president,
Mm-hmm.
it was the first year that our Easton Lions Club was awarded the best club in the state.
Oh.
Then when Nancy Sullivan became president, and we had women in the club, Nancy Sullivan became president in 2008. Then it became the best in the world that one year.
Amazing, and because
Isn't that amazing?
I go to Sweden to see family every other year, and I always go to the Lions secondhand boutique.
Yes.
Ah,
And they are international, and there are several. I go to 2 or 3 all the
Nice.
time.
that's great.
Yeah, and what the Lions Club has done for the town, we're one of the largest in the Northeast.
Yes, but when you think about
it's
the fact that there are
Yeah.
Lions clubs all over the
Yeah.
world,
Yes.
and yet Easton, Massachusetts Lions became number 1.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
That's
about 10
amazing.
years ago, right?
That's right. 2008. Yeah.
2008.
Yeah.
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 And that in the Grange, the Lions thrift shop at the Grange
That's
is
so
probably
amazing.
the biggest win-win in the history of Earth. I could get into it as to why it is.
I know.
But-
And I was
and-
part of that too,
Yeah.
because it was Avery Lee Williams riding
Yes.
his white horse.
Yeah.
And there were 3 little old ladies in their mid-80s with only $1,000 left, and that wasn't going to cover the oil bill for the winter.
There you go.
And Avery says, I have a great idea. We're going to have a partnership. We'll have the Lions
Yep.
come in, make it a
No
gift
kidding.
store.
Absolutely.
And so in the beginning, and I'm a Grange member.
Okay, so you know exactly.
Because, why am I a Grange member?
Why are you a
Yes.
Grange member?
Because Avery Lee Williams recruited 35 of us
Oh, that's him.
because these 3 little old ladies, that it was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you've got to build it up. And of course, he was a famous agricultural guy,
Sure he was.
organic gardening,
That's right.
Oh, my
all
gosh,
of that.
yeah.
And he grew up on a farm. So, but anyway, so now we get 40%. And what are we doing with that money? We have new wiring, new
Sure.
plumbing, we
Yep.
have new roof, we have
Sure.
new windows
Yep.
for the Grange building,
Yep.
new electrical,
Right.
and
That's
weatherization.
so awesome.
Yeah.
And on the Lions side of it, it's a donation for someone who wants to donate things.
Right.
Get the tax deduction. And then anybody who goes in there and buys something gets a good deal.
Right.
And then
And
and
by the
that
way,
money and the money that the Lions get goes back to the community and people who need it.
exactly.
I
And you give
researched.
scholarships to high school
Absolutely.
seniors.
Yeah.
Okay. The Lions. I mean, that thrift store is a find, and oh boy, have I found things there. Swedish glass. Don't tell anybody. They have no idea what it looks like, and I know. So I remember I picked up for $1. I had 2 votives, heavy lead crystals, Swedish Orfors glass, that would sell for at least $40 each. I got them both for $2.
Yes.
That's my best find.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Amazing.
But people go there and they're amazed.
Yes.
Sherry Anderson and Mark Ingalls have done a great job. Sherry, it's
Incredible
like a
job.
department store now.
It is. It's
Absolutely.
run
oh, no,
so
it's
well.
so
Incredible job they've done.
clean And
And okay,
organized.
and it's open only
And
on
others.
Saturdays from
That's right.
10 to 2.
Right. Right.
So don't drop things off there. You have to come and drop them off at between 10 and 1 on Saturdays.
And that's just one of the activities the Lions Club gets involved with the community. I mean, Junk Day raises a lot of money just in 4 hours. It's
Yeah.
amazing how much money.
And the
you
holiday
raise.
festival, it's
Holiday
coming up.
Festival, yeah,
The
it's
weekend
good for
of
the community.
December
Yep,
7th and 8th.
sure thing.
Okay, so Gail. Oh no, we're with
Rosemary.
you. Tell us about your adult life because we have 9 minutes left.
Right. So I left Oliver Ames, barely graduating. I had an undiagnosed learning disability and barely got out. Started college, couldn't do it, but got started in television at WBZ, and then went to WCVB, and then NEV. So I went 4, 5, and 7, and then back to 4. And then joined NBC News for a while, for about 18 years. And I left right after Dad died. I left after 9/11 as executive producer of MSNBC, covering Washington and politics.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a great run. It was fabulous. And then from there, I met my husband, who was an active duty Marine. And we got married late in life, which was so much fun. And his last deployment was my first deployment. And that got me involved in military families and veterans. And that led to an appointment as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, which then led to Assistant Secretary at VA for a little while. And now I work at Deloitte, and I couldn't be happier.
Right.
It's the perfect career,
Yeah.
last part of my career.
Yeah, I mean, that is a sterling resume when you think about it, how
Yeah.
you came from Easton and you rose in the federal government to
Yeah.
heights that you probably never anticipated.
Never anticipated working at NBC News, never anticipated working at the Pentagon, never anticipated all of it. And that's what makes life so great.
And what makes life great for all of us is how modest and humble you are, and you know, and that's one of your charms. But Gail,
Very true.
your charm is being one of the most outgoing people.
Here.
Yes, one of the most outgoing people. You'll never miss a beat, and you don't let anybody else miss a beat. And you are very entertaining on Discover Easton.
Oh, thank you.
So, but you stayed in Easton just like your brother Richard. So tell us a little bit what happened to you after high school.
Well, after college, I met my husband in Connecticut. So we lived in Connecticut for a while when we were married. And then my dream was to come back to Easton, which we did. And but I would say that in growing up in Easton, I'm involved with Oak Sames Memorial Hall. I'm one of the trustees, and I would have to attribute a lot of that to my mother, who was very involved at the hall, and I just love the hall. It's beautiful. I mean, you have to have your event at Oak Sames Memorial Hall. It's the best. So anyway, and then also, my mother also was very encouraging with us in our future and telling us like it is, and have you tried this, have you tried that? She was really an entrepreneur in her own right. And so she...
Yeah, they both were, right?
Yeah, so she encouraged in Dad, and so she encouraged me in regard to how I started my company, Shugi Border Patrol. So I was able to have my business because of her encouragement. So I would say
In your full-time job for 20 years, 3 beautiful children.
Oh, yeah.
And we've had your son, Michael?
Brad, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
you interviewed Brad, right?
Yes.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes,
Oh, I bet
Brad-
that was fascinating.
But not on this show. It was For the Love of Words, because he's a songwriter.
That's so cool.
And
And
so,
an Eagle Scout. He's an Eagle Scout. as
Yes,
well.
yeah. But so we had a 10-minute interview, and then he performed.
He did?
Oh, that's
didn't
so
see
cool.
that.
Wait a minute. No. I'm getting him mixed up with
Oh.
another Brad. No, your
Okay.
Brad is in the film business.
Yes.
And that's a show that I do with Bill Ames called Film Connection. And so we had him on for an hour, and he talked about how he got involved and so forth, and what he was working on. And we did it by Zoom
Yes.
because he's somewhere.
New York.
He's in New York City,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was
So-
fabulous.
Yeah.
Handsome young man.
Yes.
He is.
And how many children do you have?
I have 3 children. My daughter Jacqueline has taken right after my mother. She's a floral designer in San Francisco Bay Area, and her business has gone
It's called
Crazy.
it's called Poppy Cart.
poppy cart.
If anybody who's watching who wants to be just dazzled visually, It's Poppy Cart.
And it's coming to New England. So Poppy Cart's coming
Yeah.
to New England.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it really?
So, yeah,
She's,
so if you
she's
want
moving
to-
home.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
hopefully we're working on
Hopefully.
it.
We're praying every night about it.
Yes,
I
we
will say though,
are.
she and our mom were always close. She was firstborn, and they were always close.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of our mother in her talent.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they would have the funniest conversations when Jackie was just starting Poppy Cart. I'm going to see how many times I can say that. When Jackie was starting Poppy Cart, she would call her grandmother from Mom's in Easton and she's in San Francisco, and they would just go on about, what flowers and what height and foliage and container. It was really fun.
Yeah.
It's nice to see
Yeah,
that
and
carry
let's not
on.
forget that your mother was internationally recognized for her floral design.
Yes.
And I can remember her talking about going to Australia, I think it was.
New Zealand.
And New Zealand.
Twice.
Yeah.
She was all expenses paid to New Zealand. She went to Peru, Belgium,
England.
England, and then of course all around the country.
Right.
She was quite renowned.
Yeah.
Now I have another daughter, Brooke, and Brooke is VP of a
SVP now.
yeah, senior vice president
Oh.
of a company called We, W-E, and it's a woman-run business, and she's based in New York City, and she, I would say that she was encouraged by my mother and father as well, and seeing how they did things, because when she was in college, she wanted to get an internship at the Late Show with David Letterman. And it's very difficult to do that. And she wrote her own, she's a very good writer, she wrote her own write-up to interview, and they selected her. And from there, she just went on and on and on. So there's a lot of the infiltration with that. And then you can talk about Bonnie and how she's actually become an entrepreneur as well.
Yes, yes.
So
Runs in the blood.
Right. Bonnie is a licensed acupuncturist in 3 states now. She got married last year and to a wonderful man named Russ, and they bought a house in Maine, in Lewiston, and so she's come a long way. And
So, you're all very relieved, aren't you?
yeah,
And the good news is that and I know you're wrapping up now, I wanted to let you know that the great fun is that everybody's going to be together for Thanksgiving.
Oh,
It's our first Thanksgiving
Yes,
without Mom,
yes.
so it's a little
Yeah,
bittersweet,
yeah.
but everybody's coming home
Yeah.
to Easton.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mom
How
and Dad
wonderful.
would have been married 70 years yesterday.
Really?
70 years yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, and
This was fun.
Yeah.
It was, and it was
Yeah.
fun to reminisce, remember,
Yeah.
and think about all that you inherited, all the good stuff
Sure.
We love
from
Easton.
both your parents,
Yep.
Yeah, we love Easton.
and how you've passed it on to your children, your nieces and nephews.
Yep.
And all of that. So thank you. And thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed growing up in Easton. I certainly have. This has been a walk down memory lane, and I hope that you have walked with us with joy, contentment, and this has been a blessing. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, be well.